Hello everybody, and this is the PowerPoint presentation for Social Work 111. We are in week 3, and we are looking at the first of what will be a fairly long journey creating a paper. It's a little unusual, but we're actually going to start with of the research chapters, Chapter 2. And Chapter 2 is what we would call writing the literature review. The literature review in any research is typically going to be Chapter 2. With respect to writing a literature review, there's quite a few things you need to know, and this PowerPoint presentation is going to take you through those things. It's going to be helpful for you to follow along on with your sheet with respect to writing the literature review, as a lot of the things that I'll be saying here will correspond with things you're going to want to know in terms of writing or completing your participation sheet, and also along the way you're going to need to know these things to complete your literature review, which is, of course, as I mentioned, Chapter 2 of your paper overall. Let's go ahead and take a look. I just want to give you a very brief preface. This particular presentation has a few more words than I would prefer. Most PowerPoints I like to use pictures and describe, but this one's a bit wordy. But we'll just go through it anyway, and hopefully it'll make sense to you as we go along. So when writing a literature review, the first thing we probably need to know is what a literature review consists of. What's in a literature review? Let's take a look. The first thing you need to know about a literature review is that it provides a historical context for whatever the population or issue that you're focusing on is about. It's great for the reader to understand that whatever it is you're looking at didn't exist in a vacuum. It comes from a context. So historical context for population or issue or both is one thing that the literature review provides. Theoretical basis for your framework, whether it is conflict theory or it is any kind of micro or meso level approach to looking at life or phenomenons that occur within it, a theoretical basis is going to be included in the literature review as well. So theoretical basis is the second thing provided by a literature review. Previous and existing research for your topic. It's going to be rare that you're going to find a topic that doesn't have something that's been researched about it, and that's helpful because you can lean on that to get information for even the historical context. Previous and existing research with respect to your topic is something that's included in the literature reviews. The other thing that happens for literature reviews is we clarify important terms and how they shall be measured in the course of whatever your research is. Operationalization is the formal term for this. Perhaps in your statistics class you learned what operationalization meant, or even if you didn't, it's not that important. We'll cover it here. Operationalization is when you are explaining to the reader of your research how specific important terms shall be defined and measured. So if I was, for example, using the term depression in my research, then am I using the DSM-5 definition? I don't know. But if I am, I need to state that in the literature review. That's usually where we're going to operationalize terms. Also, how will things be measured? Severity of depression, is it just in terms of suicidal ideation? How in my research I intend to measure a concept. That's going to be included in the literature review. Guidelines for writing the literature review. It's very helpful, in fact, I would say required, to use headings for chapters and subheadings for major sections within the chapter. That's actually a really helpful way to go about writing the literature review. Make sure your chapters have headings, so they're usually centered in the center of the page. Subheadings are usually off to the left in a little bit smaller font. They're both usually bold-faced. We'll definitely be able to see some examples of these in the course of the next couple weeks. Describe previous and existing literature in the past tense. Students frequently use present tense for the entirety of the paper, and when you're describing previous or existing literature, typically it's already been done. So of course, you'll use the past tense. That's something that students frequently need to learn. The APA format, which we're going to go over in a couple minutes here, is going to be used in for both in-text citations, so when you're writing your paper, how you'll cite within the paper, and also for your reference page, which follows at the end of, usually it's going to be at the end of the paper altogether. It will also use APA format, which is again, the APA format is what we use in all of the classes for social work. This includes both bachelor's level and master's level. Control for outdated research, except when it is warranted. A lot of times when we're talking about theoretical basis or landmark research, we might go beyond 10 years. 10 years is a good stopping point. And when I say 10 years, it's 10 years inclusive of the current year. So when you're looking up research, we always make sure that it falls within about a 10-year span, unless it is again warranted or it is absolutely landmark. Okay. Let's take a look at how this could possibly read. I have a citation here from a book that I teach from, and what I'm going to do is, this is the actual citation from the book. And then we're going to look on the next slides about how you could cite it in different ways. So there are more reasons than just being cost effective to use groups as both preventative and remedial strategies for adolescents. Depression for many people, and particularly for adolescents, is often related to a lack of social skills or cognitive strategies that result from not having friends or having difficulties feeling isolated and alone or different, and having unrealistic expectations and beliefs about oneself. Group therapeutic factors such as universality, altruism, vicarious learning, and interpersonal learning operate to help group members develop better relationship skills, develop adaptive thought patterns, and normalize feelings, thoughts, and events. That was a lot of information just now, but it's also good information I could use. Think about what this is saying. It's talking about treatment of depression for adolescents in a group format. And it's also talking about the kinds of things that adolescents can get out of it. It mentions a number here, and it also describes briefly why adolescents could be wrestling with symptoms of depression. So there's a lot here in this paragraph. But again, if you were writing a paper, you can't just write something like what I just read and pass it off as your own. That would be plagiarism. Instead, what you have to do is be able to paraphrase or cite selectively from the text and give credit to where credit is due. Now you can see that I've also given an APA citation here. That's the author's last name. There is the date, publication, and here's the page of the book from which I was looking at. So with respect to this quote, I gave already this entire paragraph a citation in parentheses, and we're also going to talk about how you could cite from this paragraph in the next couple slides. So go ahead and follow along with me. Next, okay, take a look at this. This would be considered a paraphrase, okay? So the first example I'm giving you is a paraphrase. Because adolescents often suffer from feelings of depression due to social alienation and distorted thought patterns, groups may provide a supportive environment to ameliorate these feelings and thoughts. Now, did this capture the essence of the paragraph we just read on the previous slide? Yeah, but did I use the exact language that was used in the previous paragraph? No. Instead of saying, for example, they were talking about unrealistic expectations for others, I used distorted thought patterns. The previous paragraph said being alone. I used social alienation. Okay, groups may provide a supportive environment to ameliorate these feelings and thoughts. What I did was I used my own words. I used exclusively my own words to capture the spirit and the essence of what was said on the last paragraph. So this is a very powerful way. In fact, it's the preferred way in the social work department to cite from texts. And when you're using this in the context of a paper, this is definitely a preferred measure, the preferred method for APA. Okay, here's another one. Notice on the previous that I had at the conclusion of the citation, the author's name and the year. Look what happened here. This is essentially saying almost the same thing in the previous slide, but let's see how it reads. SWRK, 2006, suggests that psychoeducational groups are a cost-effective and useful way for adolescents to reduce feelings of isolation and develop social skills, which can combat symptoms of depression. Again, did I use my own words here? Certainly I did. Okay. In the original paragraph, we didn't hear the verb combat. Feelings of isolation is kind of the way I adapted it. Develop social skills. The original paragraph said skills groups. So again, I'm not using the exact terms of the previous from the source text. I'm using my own words to capture it. And see how I did this time? This is another way you can do it. I used the author's name, the year, and then I said what the author suggested. So again, on the previous, let's just take a look at it. On the previous slide, notice I concluded the sentence with the citation. In this new one, I began the citation by giving the author's name and then the year in parentheses. You can see the difference here. So I can either do it, either way is fine. Okay, it looks like that, SWRK 2006. Or I can start out, SWRK 2006 suggests that these are just different variations of effectively doing the same thing. So this is APA formatting and the type of paraphrasing that's acceptable. And these are powerful ways to write. Let's take a look at another example. Okay, here we are. See what you can notice is different here. Psychoeducational groups may help ease feelings of depression in adolescents, as such groups, quote, help group members develop better relationship skills, develop adaptive thought patterns, and normalize feelings, thoughts, and events. Now, what did I do different here? I used an actual quote from the text in my citation. Notice how I did this, though. I entered the quotation marks, and when I gave the citation, I indicated what page that the actual quote comes from. Notice that I also wove it's interwoven into my first sentence. So I was the one who wrote this one. I wrote psychoeducational groups may help ease feelings of depression in adolescents as such groups. But then when I went in to explain what the groups do, I cited directly from the text. And in doing so, I used, of course, the quotation marks and the page number. So anytime you use, what's the take home here, folks? Anytime you use quotation marks, it's fine to cite verbatim, so the exact words from the text. But you must give, again, the author's name, the year, and the page on which the quotation falls. Okay, so that's page 3 is exactly where it comes from. Okay, good. Hopefully, so you've looked at 3 ways now. Let's just take those look at those again. Okay, on this particular example, it is purely my paraphrasing, but I also gave credit with the author's name and the year. In the second example, we use the author's name as part of the paragraph and the year. Okay, there was nothing at the end. Okay, and we didn't use a page number because there was nothing directly quoted from the text. It's all paraphrased still. In the third example, we have my original text at the beginning leading into a quote from the text. But because it's a quote from the text, we used quotation marks, and I gave the author's name, the year, and page numbers. Okay, or the page number in this case. Okay, these are all absolutely permissible ways to cite using APA formatting. I have a concluding thought for you. Although each of the techniques above are APA approved, the first 2 are more desirable, as they require more thought and synthesis by the writer. The final example, the direct quotation, that was the one with the quotation marks, are allowed but should be used sparingly. I can't emphasize this enough for you. The reason the social work department really wants folks to use their own thoughts in paraphrasing what they read is because in terms of learning, it's an extra step. Do you remember well, I guess, if you can think of it, if you can remember the fact that if you have to process the information through your own thinking, there's a better chance that you're learning more than just regurgitating what an author said. So That's why our social work department, and I think a lot of other departments on this campus, really prefer paraphrasing instead to direct quotes. It does demonstrate a synthesis of what you learned. And that is going to conclude this particular PowerPoint presentation. And I will be moving on to look at some other things eventually with some examples. Thanks for watching.